Hey Sundogs, thanks so much for tuning in to the Mixdown today. You might be wondering why we're wearing these silly hats. They're not silly at all, they're actually super pro, because we're at the bakery. We're here with Eric Boulanger, head baker, mastering engineer, also winner of 2 Grammys recently. We're here on behalf of Underground Sun and Iggy T and the Crazymakers, our band, because we're mastering our debut record.
And we wanted to share with you the mastering process, both for vinyl and for digital.
Well, before we can do that, shouldn't we
turn it up
and mix it down?
Nailed it.
Underground Sun is an independent record label and music studio.
We're here to connect with the music community by sharing our unconventional knowledge and by creating conversation about songwriting, recording and production techniques, and all things music business.
Welcome to the Mixdown. Before we get into the interview with Eric, I want to give you a little bit of context. If you've watched any of our shows before, you know that we live in Ojai, California. Well, it just so happens that Eric Boulanger learned his mastering crafts right here in Ojai as well. He studied under the world-renowned Doug Sax, who was a mastering engineer who mastered a ton of different records that you've heard of, including Pink Floyd's The Wall. Check out his list of credits someday, it's insane. When Doug passed away in 2015, Eric struck out on his own and opened up the bakery. Since then, he's mastered blockbuster soundtracks, songs you've heard on the radio, and even won a few Grammys along the way. Being in his studio was a pleasure. The Ojai vibes were strong and we had a lot of fun. Possibly too much fun. Anyway, let's get to it.
This is the first time that I've ever done mastering with vinyl in mind. So I wanted to ask the master himself about his process for mastering to digital and to vinyl. So can you tell me a little bit about the differences between mastering for digital versus vinyl?
Sure. Well, to start, it's important to realize that there really shouldn't be any difference, right? You know, when you make a record and you're being creative, you know, the holy grail of formats should be one that can just convey that to your listener exactly as what's floating around in the artist's mind, right? The thing that's really fun to talk about specifically with vinyl, everyone likes to say, oh, it's because it sounds better, blah, blah, blah. And the fact of the matter is very often it doesn't. You know, very often records are made at high resolution and that's what is generating the vinyl too. And the vinyl is therefore a generation later than it. But the thing that people don't stop to really appreciate is we don't sell formats, we sell experiences. First of all, you have to find the record, right? You have to seek it out. You open up the record, put the record on the player, drop the needle. Usually you're playing it on, you know, big speakers. And then you take the artwork and you go on your couch and you sit with it and you're reading the artwork while you're enjoying that record that took you this long to actually just get to play. Now, when do you do that with any other format? Like, do you think you'd ever do that with streaming? No. When you listen to vinyl, it kind of forces you to listen to it correctly.
In our process, we've talked about that experience. So we've ordered the songs in a particular way to help create that experience. And side 1 ends and side 2 begins. And you have to think about that energy exchange for like how you want the listener to experience that. When do they get up and turn the record? And one of the things that Eric recommended for us was to have sort of a slower song, a ballad sort of at the end of side 1 that sort of entices people to get up off the couch and then go over and flip it and then have a little bit more energy once they've gotten up off the couch and pick it back up. So we've implemented that on our record. Another thing that Eric was talking about, which I found to be very interesting and didn't really understand in this process, was if you have a longer side, you actually need to reduce the volume so that it will actually fit on a side of...
So this is strictly technical speaking, but vinyl is a physical format. And so a cutter head, a lathe, works just like a speaker. You're energizing a voice coil, and instead of moving a paper cone that's moving air, you're moving a little stick that's connected to a rock ground to a very fine point. that's making a little scratch in the equivalent of nail polish. And so the bigger the signal, the bigger the squiggle. The bigger the squiggle, the more room you take up. And of course, you have a finite space on your disc. So if you're using up more room, guess what? You're gonna have less time on your record because you just burned up all your space.
All right, let's get real for a minute. When I go to the mastering studio, it's a magical experience. Everything sounds so much better, especially if you have a little bourbon in you. But when you get your masters home, you gotta check them. Check them on your speakers, check them in your earbuds, check them on your car. And I'm gonna be honest with you, the first round of masters that we brought home, I wasn't exactly excited about them. They were missing something. They were missing a little mid-range, they were missing some glue and some power that brought all the instruments together. And I kind of figured out that it was a mixing issue. So I actually remixed the entire album. I put a little bit more bus compression on it, tweaked a little EQ here and there, and brought those mixes back to Eric to remaster. And he did an amazing job. They sound terrific. They actually match what I was hearing in my head. The bottom line is, go for the sound that you want. If the mix isn't right, if the master isn't right, do another pass. Get it right. It's your album and it's going out to the world. All right, that's your Let's Get Real moment. Let's go back to the studio.
Is there anything else you want to share with our viewers, or gonna kick us out?
I think I'm gonna kick you out.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your studio with us, your skills.
Of course. Well, thank you for bringing this album in.
Oh,
Can't wait for everyone to hear it.
But thank you for joining us. Cheers. Bye.
There we go.
Cheers.